Well, welcome everyone. This is my third edition, but I believe our fourth edition of Cape Ann ARTWaves. This is a new show where we're discussing with artists all over Cape Ann and beyond their inspiration and a little bit about things that might be different today than they were maybe a couple of months ago. Today's guest is Chris Williams, who is a metal sculptor, and he is based in Essex, Massachusetts. And welcome, Chris. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. It's fun to talk to people about the art.
And I've known you a long time, so it's really been exciting to watch your work evolve and also see you evolve as an artist. You do a lot of outreach, and it's very impressive. So I'm really excited and privileged to be able to speak with you today.
Awesome. Thank you.
So let's start with your inspiration. Obviously, there are a lot of people on Cape Ann who do know you, but then there are those who don't. And of course, we're going to be all over social media when we're done. So we'd love to share your story broadly. So let's talk about your work, your inspiration, your history, how you got to where you are today.
Okay. My history, I guess, starts in Rockport, Mass. I grew up, my dad is a machinist, and I had the chance to work in his shop as a young kid, and I learned how to use a lot of his tools. And that kind of began my exposure to metal and metalworking. And then I kind of took it in another direction. In my early 20s, I started to weld metal parts together and just understanding the process of joining metal. And I was just really fascinated with the molten hot metal. Playing with that was just everything for me. So that really got the ball rolling. And then, you know, the artwork, I have to say, I think it's probably just being exposed to the artists on Cape Ann and growing up in Rockport, it's just surrounded me. So it really was a very short drive over to trying to take some creative projects on. And, you know, from now, I'm doing a lot of metal shaping and forming, and most all of my work is really just a welded one-off type of sculpture approach.
But it's very specific, your work. I think you have some types of sculpture you do, people that you're known for. So I think you maybe could be specific in describing that.
Okay, so I'm doing a lot with animal themes and wildlife themes. Mostly, what attracts me to it is the motion of the, you know, the life in the animals is really what I love to capture. And I've had a lot of fun just kind of relating the way the metal bends and curves and comparing that to the, you know, the shapes that I see in the animals. And for me, it just matches right up very easily. So, you know, I've enjoyed doing a lot of living characters, you know, and then recently I started doing some more contemporary stuff. I've had a lot of fun with glass and mixing different mediums, and that's kind of pulled me in another direction. But I gotta say, most of the things that I do seem to have a spirit in them, and that's really what attracts me to this work.
That's great. It also provides a lot of challenges. As we go through this particular period that we've been in, has this, you know, sort of pause in our lives as we have known them, inspired anything different or new? Are you doing anything different or new? Do you have something in your head that you think you're going to try?
Yeah, I tell you, I think times are different right now, and I've been at this for 25 years, and I've never had, you know, such, you know, intensive creative paths in my work, uninterrupted paths. And, you know, I know that there's a, you know, a lot of negativity going on around this whole, you know, situation. But honestly, as an artist, and I'm sure other artists can relate to this, by having a quiet space to work and few interruptions, it's been very, very productive. And I guess I've really come to understand that part of the creativity is so important. And you know, I've had people working with me at times. I've you know, managed several projects at once. I've kind of got a busy thing going on,
Mm.
And I've realized now that it's so important to just make sure that you keep things as simple as you can, so that that creativity is really the main focus. So it's different now. It's different in a good way as well as a challenging way.
Right. But that's good. I am glad to hear that actually, and I can relate to it as well. So let's talk about process. Your process is, again, to me as an outsider, it's got to be pretty complex because of the materials that you're working with. But also giving people insight into the process is so important for the viewer. It's really part of your story. So why don't you give us some insight into that?
The process is what draws me into the work. So what I guess I would describe what I'm doing on a daily basis is, if you could imagine, say, an instrument maker who's making, metal horns, or some type of a craft where you have to form and shape each piece perfectly so that the entire thing works together. That's what I'm doing. I'm taking sheets of metal, rods of metal, and I'm manipulating them and working on them, and to the point where they don't really look like metal any longer. So it's transforming the materials from something that's recognizable into something else, and that's my main thing. And to do that, I'm making a lot of my own tools, and part of the process for me is learning how to do what I intend, what I set out for. And
Right.
each job has a different component that I want to insert into the work, and that component usually creates the challenge that I guess it's there's a lot of losses when it
Yeah.
comes to trying to get to a point where you're happy. You have
Right.
a pile of things in the shop that are
Yeah.
almost there. So
Okay. I like
everybody can
that. I
relate to
like
that.
that. There's two related questions here that I want to ask you, but
Okay.
one in particular is, you have really large pieces, you have really small. I see some of the smaller pieces in the background.
Yep.
Do you approach them differently?
I think I want to put some type of life into each thing. So there's a commonality there. But
Mm.
as I'm making these pieces, I find that the smaller ones seem to have a personality, or something that kind of invokes a conversation. It kind of gets people to talk to one another about the piece, or something that they see in the piece. So that's a kind of a fun thing the smaller pieces really bring out in people.
Hmm.
And then I find the larger work, it's more about how does it feel to be standing in front of a huge monumental piece of art. I mean, that is like a moment of pause. So they both tend to have a different way that people take them in. And for
Mhm.
me, in the shop when I'm making things, I think it's a lot of fun to see several small pieces together and to see their differences. So
Hmm.
that's really like on a day-to-day or moment-to-moment basis. It's fun to see those little personalities.
Yeah.
The larger work, you have to stick with it. You got to stay with the project, stay on task. And, sometimes they're months at a time. So
Mhm.
there's a huge reward that comes from seeing the finished piece. And
Mm.
you just have to fight for it. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they're both different, in fun ways.
Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts as I'm thinking about your pieces and their personalities. But let's move on to the obvious question then, is problem solving, which is a big challenge for many artists. They can often have to completely stop, on working on something. And I imagine that you've had some killer problems. So just, if you can, think in the last couple of months or years, like what's been the biggest problem you've solved, and how did you approach it?
The biggest problem, I guess, but the work is filled with challenges. I'm always trying to find ways to do something new. And when you find a new thing you want to try,
Mm.
you've got to learn how to do it. So I've learned how to do mold making for some of the glass work that I've done. And, right now I'm working on a huge dragon for the convention center in South Boston, and it's holding on to an enormous piece of granite. So to get the piece to actually look like it's holding on to a shape, I had to make the feet and bend and form them around the rocks, and to actually be able to have it all fit together. So that type of a project, really, you have to understand how things work together, how the weight is going to be managed. I'm thinking about the wings on this dragon, and the wind down in South Boston, and there's a lot to think that goes into this, to try to get it right.
Wow, wow. Did you
Yeah.
have to collaborate with anyone on that? I'm just curious. Did you any stone workers or did you have to go anywhere for any advice from?
At the moment, I found a person in Maine that has a collection of terrific stones, and I was able to find one there that I could use. It was ready to go.
Great.
And, the concept of holding on to these rocks, that really started because I wanted to display my work in public places like airports and different things, and I wanted to have a, a base that they could rest on or that they would attach to so they wouldn't get knocked over. So I started using granite in my work probably about 10 years ago. And
Mm,
back then, the pieces were much smaller and everything kind of got big. But the concept is still the same. I think that the granite really provides an anchor to a lot of the different projects. So
yeah.
it's been fun.
Okay. Well, I have a fun question then, since we talked about tools and you've had to make your own tools, which in itself is amazing. So what's your favorite tool? This is maybe like asking you, who's your favorite relative? I don't know, but tell me, what is your favorite tool?
Well, I make a lot of tools for bending and forming, and
Mm,
I do a lot of manipulation of the metal, hammering it on a tree stump and blacksmithing. But
mm,
the one that really gets me, that got me right from the start, is the welding. I
mm,
love to turn the solid material into a liquid. And when
mm.
I see that molten metal, I'm just fascinated. Even today, it's just so much fun to watch the metal flow and to pull it around with the heat. I mean, for me, that's where it's at.
Wow, that's great. Well, you've stayed with your beginning, with your roots, so to speak. So this will be our last question,
Okay.
but it's pretty significant because of
All
this
right.
strange time that we're in right now. So
Yeah.
what's next? Because we all want to have something to look forward to in, sort of when we kind of come through all this, and we will obviously have a new, as somebody called it recently, a new abnormal. But what's next for you? What are you looking forward to?
Well, I'm really looking forward to holding on to some of that art time that I'm getting
Mm,
so much of right now.
yep.
I don't want to lose any of that. The work for me is always changing, and I've done a lot of different things. And the one thing I haven't tried just yet that I think I may take a stab at over the summer is doing things that move. I'd really like to find some movement into the work, mobiles or something that changes. And
Mhm.
you know, I I wouldn't be surprised if there'd be some glass and metal in that type of a concept, but I look at things in different ways, and I want people to enjoy the work in different ways. So I
Yeah,
think that may be coming for me.
great. Well, Chris, it's just been delightful to speak
Oh,
with you.
good. Well,
Every
thank you for
time I
having
talk
me.
with you, I learn something new, and the audience will learn something new. And this will be broadcast on local TV, and it will be on YouTube, and it will be on Facebook. So make sure that you share it with all your friends.
Will do. Thank you. That's great.
And that wraps up our interview for today with Chris Williams, metal sculptor from Essex. Thank you so much.
Thank you.